Let's talk about the other talent. We know now that Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio are going to remain as a part of WCW once it was revealed that the terms of Raven's contract were you're free to go, but not to the WWF. Well, those guys decide, I think I'll just stick with WCW. And meanwhile, Conan, Sandman, and Public Enemy, they've all reached out to ECW and said they would seek their release from WCW if Paul Heyman was interested. And Paul apparently said thanks, but no thanks to all of them. According to the Torch, Heyman is said to have turned down Conan because of his high salary and reputation as being a locker room menace. And I guess Heyman's upset that Hack and Public Enemy left the company without giving notice and then badmouthed ECW once they were gone. Heyman's also upset that Sandman sued ECW for money he felt like he was owed. And how dare Sandman actually want to get paid for the work he did? So Heyman says no thanks to those guys. Meanwhile, SmackDown is going to come out and it's going to be on UPN and it's going to be head to head with Thunder. And the result is the worst rating ever in the history of Thunder. It's pre-taped and there's no emphasis, nothing done special to sort of counter program UPN. Are you just tapping out at this point? Like, hey, I don't have the bandwidth for all this. I
tapped out long before this point.
Yeah.
It would be a matter of weeks before I was fishing at this point. We're talking about the middle of August. I was gone on September 10th. So this is like 2.5 weeks before I was out the door. Yeah, but I had checked out long before that.
There's a report in the Torch that there's some heat on Kevin Sullivan and Mike Graham, who made the call to take those tag straps off of Harlem Heat and put them on the Wyndhams. And I guess the feeling amongst a lot of the talent in the locker room is, hey, the Wyndhams aren't over. They got to be getting this opportunity because they're friends with Sullivan and Graham going back to the Florida days. And there's even a narrative growing in the Torch that, quote, Barry Windham is looked at as a stooge by the other wrestlers because he's always hanging out in the office and has snitched on Bobby Duncombe Jr. several times for minor infractions. Do you remember ever hearing that there was heat on Sullivan and Graham for the Windham win? And maybe Barry's a stooge? I hadn't heard that before.
All this stuff is stuff I've never heard before. I've never met anybody that didn't have the utmost respect for Barry Windham. Yeah, some people may have liked him more than others, but stooge? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And I don't, the belt thing, who knows? I just told you I was checked out, and I was. And so I don't really know for sure, but let me just posit this, if I may. If you're a booker, your job is to get talent over. Well, if the Harlem Heat were already over, and your job is to get talent over, and you've got these, what do they call them? Rednecks? Texas rednecks?
Yeah, West Texas rednecks.
Yeah. And they got a record out that's getting national airplay. Because we just talked about that. So we've got some traction over here with these two guys. They're not as over as these two guys. God, I don't know. Let me throw just a wild ass idea out there. Since these guys are getting some national record airplay and these guys are over, why don't we use these guys that are over to help get these guys even more over so that we got two tag teams that are both over and we can do more stuff with? I don't know. It's probably a fucking wacky idea. Yeah, forget I said it.
Just a wacky idea. Let's talk about something else wacky. You guys put tickets on sale for Fall Brawl in Winston-Salem, and you barely sold 2,000 tickets. It's a huge disappointment. Of course, this was a monster pay-per-view for you guys in 96 and 97 and 98. Now, maybe not so much here in 99. Of course, hardcore Crockett fans would say, oh, they killed the town with 1997 when they had the NWO turn and Kurt Hennig slammed the cage door on Ric Flair's head. I don't know if I know about that, but I know that when this moves barely 2,000 tickets, it takes the Torch to say that maybe your future as the head of WCW is on shaky ground. Some are saying he'll be lucky to make it beyond January of 2000. And they're saying some of this may be because of deals that you've cut, such as a video production deal involving Jason Hervey and Mandalay, which some believe could have been done cheaper in-house by Turner. And this is a narrative that I've heard a few times out there, Eric, that you were double dipping using your power inside of WCW to greenlight projects that you were also going to be compensated on. So you would award those contracts to Jason Hervey and his team, of which you were a part of. That's the narrative. I want to give you a chance to sort of respond to some of those reports.
Yeah, kind of like the movie that we're just talking about that was a record-breaking movie at Turner Broadcasting in the Turner Library, like 12 years since anybody did as well, that I brought in through Jason Hervey and my relationship with him, which, by the way, I didn't get paid a nickel on. I didn't even get a credit on that one. How about that? Didn't even get a credit. So I'm throwing a bullshit flag on that. Look, it's an easy story to write. It's an easy narrative to create because it could be true, but nothing is farther from the truth. You think, here, let me give you an example. Nitro Bar and Grill. It's a flashback. When the group that financed that project came to me and pitched the idea of opening up a Nitro Bar and Grill in Las Vegas, part of their pitch to me is that I would be part owner. 10%, 12%. Potentially meaningful, but 99 times out of 100, it's a courtesy, especially in the restaurant business. That's 10% of net profit, right? Come on. In Vegas. But nonetheless, that opportunity was afforded to me. Now, the guys that came to me, I think, were from New Jersey. And I don't mean to cast any shade, but there's a way East Coast people do business, and there's a way you do business out West. And, it's all a little kabuki-ish from time to time, or has the potential to be. And there's always ways to work around potential conflicts and challenges if you choose to. I made it clear to those guys that I would not even present it the way they presented it to me, because I wouldn't want the perception of me being involved in something like that. Now that's never been out there publicly. I'm sharing that for the first time here because, quite frankly, I forgot about it until just now. But for that kind, for people to, whether it's Wade Keller who did it or Meltzer who continues to do it, that's the kind of hurtful bullshit that costs people jobs and affects people's reputations. It didn't mine, by the way. I had been, just for the record, as I've talked about this previously, there was a point in time early on in the merger where there was a Time Warner executive, a very high-ranking executive, who came to a WCW show and was on his way back to his hotel room and happened to get into an elevator with a gentleman who was wearing a WCW crew shirt. And this executive, who was a part of this newly formed, merger between these two behemoths in media, started asking a couple of questions. And the person that he was talking to fabricated a whole bunch of garbage that this individual, high-ranking Time Warner executive, heard and went, "Ooh, wait a minute, aren't we buying that? Maybe we should look into that." And that conversation, which was completely nonsense, by the way, with an absolutely non-credible individual who didn't even really work didn't really work, had no relationship with WCW. He wanted to have a relationship and he wanted to be on the ring crew. I think he got as far as a shirt. And nonetheless, that launched an internal investigation. I found out about it after it was over, when I got called to Harvey Schiller's office, which very rarely happened. And when it did, it was usually a pleasurable experience. There was an attorney along with him, and I can't think of his name now, but he was the chief. He was the attorney. He was the corporate attorney for Turner. He wasn't a part of the corporate team. He was general counsel for Turner Broadcasting. Was in the room when I got called up there. And I thought, this is that. I knew the individual. I had a great relationship with him. We'd say hi to each other when we'd see each other in the food court and that kind of happy shit. But now I'm getting called up to Harvey's office and he's sitting there and I'm thinking, well, this is bizarre. And they sat me down and explained to me, "Eric, we just want you to know. We called you up here to let you know that despite some rumors that we had heard, we launched an internal audit. And we want you to know the results of that audit is that you've done absolutely nothing wrong. This is the first I'm hearing about it. And I'm being told that I have nothing to worry about because I've already been investigated and I'm clean as a whistle. But they wanted me to know in case the word got back after the investigation was over that it took place, and they wanted to be the first ones to tell me, and I understand that. But that's the kind of damage. And you can't possibly even relate or understand how that could. Are you kidding me? How some goof in a locker room or in an elevator could make a couple of ridiculous comments with no basis to them, and that could launch an investigation? Yes, it can. And yes, it did. And that's why I think when people decide they're going to cover the industry, look, criticize it all you want. It's your prerogative. You should. By the way, find a way to be entertaining if that's what you're going to do. At least try to be. And always give us a reason why. Cool enough. But when you start representing that you have inside information and it's sexy and it's like half sleazy, kind of dirty, kind of cool, kind of create some heat. Maybe these two guys really don't like. You could create that kind of drama all you want, but when you give the illusion that or the perception that you have some insight and backstage connections and observations that can not just piss people off, but affect their livelihoods, should be really careful about that. So I'm not going to go off on any more Dave Meltzer tangents, I promise. We've been doing this show for nearly 3.5 hours. I spent more time talking about that piece of human garbage than I ever thought I wanted to. But I appreciate the opportunity to make these points because sometimes I say shit and people can't figure out, why is he so upset about this stuff? Why does he give it up? Why does he even care? Because I care about the people that are in the business whose lives are affected.